Hey guys, welcome to the Vintage Guitar Voyage. I am your tour guide again. This is Brad with Main Stage Music right here in Dayton, Tennessee. So, what have I got in store for you today? Well, what I've brought you is a 1968 Gretsch 6120 Chet Atkins Nashville model. So this guitar was introduced in 1955, I guess. Some people say 54. Let's just say the mid-1950s. The records weren't, they didn't have big reveal parties and stuff like that back in the 50s. They were just inventing cool stuff that we still love today. But back in 1955, 54, whenever, when the first ones came out, they were orange. They were iconic already because Chet Atkins is whatever you want to call it, awesome. And but they were slightly different. The original ones from that era had a single cutaway, and then over here it was just kind of looped over. And this one, as you can see, is different than that. There were some other differences with those original ones. The pickups were single coil, manufactured by a place called D'Armond. But in 1958, roughly the same time that Gibson and Seth Lover invented their humbucking pickups, gee whiz, Gretsch came out with a humbucking pickup of their own. Industrial espionage, anyone? Who knows? But theirs was different, slightly smaller, more rounded, and wow, what a sound. So these are called Filtertron pickups. They were introduced in 1958 and are still in production today, and they're obviously on this particular guitar. So I'm just kind of going over some basic stuff about this. What makes these models unique from those first, let me see here. So I guess it came out in 55. By 1962, they wanted a change of look, so they gave it the double cutaway, all right? You can go back to that front screen there. The double cutaway versus the single cutaway. Maybe it's just a new hip look, because it wasn't the only model they did that to. They also had a model called the Country Gentleman that they did that to as well, which of course Beatles fans will know that's the one that Georgie Harrison liked. So with the double cutaway model that started in 62, it pretty much, I don't know, we'll just say it was the new version of the 6120 Nashville. A few other little features that they added in the 60s. These, you might think, are F-holes. Well, I guess they are F-holes, right? But look at this. They're painted on. They're painted on F-holes. So it's just done for style, okay? Not for actual function. Before 62, they actually had real F-holes. You could stick your finger right in there. And of course, the F-holes served a function of how they fed the wires into the guitar to wire it all up. This model has painted on F-holes. Now, you might ask, why would you paint on the F-hole on a guitar? Well, what happens is, if you have ever played out live, the sound of your guitar, okay, resonating through a guitar amplifier, they claim can get fed back into your, the body of the guitar, resonate and cause feedback problems. It's like a howling sound. Because a Gretsch guitar is fully hollow, okay? It's not got a solid center block like some of the later Gibson models did. So these were prone to feeding back. So they decided they were going to paint the F-holes, not allowing that sound to get into the box, jumble around in there, resonating and causing feedback. Did it work? Yeah, it worked. It's cool. I mean, I don't, I look at it now like there's other things you can do to reduce that. But back in the day, they're just, this is fairly still in the infancy of electric guitars. I think 62, they were still within, I mean, really the first 10, 15 years of this even existing. That's pretty cool. Okay, so this is definitely a relic of that age. A couple other things that they did per Chet Atkins style, okay, for people who aren't aware of Chet Atkins style, he had that kind of three-fingered, oh, I'll get to that later. That kind of bouncy, they call it three-finger style. Well, he got that kind of punka-plunka sound by palm muting, okay? So he'd, if you didn't mute it, it wouldn't sound like the way Chet wanted it. So they thought, well, hey, what if we added a little detail that's never been on a guitar before? This little dude here is a mute, okay? This is a little piece of foam that is attached to a lever inside the guitar. It might be hard to see even with our, well, you can kind of see it there. You can see the hole there from the side. So what this is doing is if you flip this clunky looking switch, it's a mechanical rod that runs through the middle here, and when you push this up, it pushes the foam piece up against the strings. So I'm going to demonstrate it for you. Watch this. It mutes the string and it locks in place there. So now you don't have to palm mute. It mutes it by itself. What do you think of the sound? I don't know. Not a fan. To me, it just sounds like junk because it doesn't have that nice warmth of your actual palm hitting it. And with your hand, you know, you can kind of regulate how hard you want it to mute the strings. With this guy, it's up or down. You know what though? It's like I love that Gretsch and other companies during this time were trying stuff. Because what's funny is music manufacturers would create something that serendipitously might invent a whole style of music. So, hey, kudos for Gretsch doing it. It's just, if you're wondering about this guitar, what is this goofy thing? This is a mute, and that's what this switch does. Let's talk about the other switches on this guitar, because a lot of times there's confusion on how a Gretsch guitar operates. Okay, so we've already talked about this clunky knob. This is that mute, okay? But here's an interesting little factoid about a Gretsch guitar. Do you know it doesn't have a tone pot? Yeah. So all these three knobs here are all volume controls. So this is a volume control for the rear pickup, or the lead pickup, some people might call it. This is the volume control for the neck pickup. And then this is the master volume for the blend that you create here, okay? Now, because I'm boring, I just have them all turned to 10, right? But you might think, well, you know, why, you know, it's just volume. Why would you do that? You know, they actually do that on a lot of bass guitars. So let's say, for example, that you wanted your guitar to have a really full sound in the neck. You might put that all the way up at 10, right? Okay, so there's your treble, or excuse me, your neck pickup. That big swollen sound. But then let's say you wanted your lead pickup to have half the volume. You can do that. Let's say you didn't want that twang. Long story short, volume, volume, volume. Okay, so they're all up to 10. Okay, I also kind of spoiled the beans about this one. This guy here is your pickup selector. So just like a modern guitar, you flip it down for the rear pickup, you flip it up for the neck pickup. And of course in the middle for both pickups. It sounds great. Here's the neck pickup. Oh, what I'm using for an amplifier, I'm using my Deluxe Amplification number 9, which is a little 9-watt all-tube combo. And I'm running it through a Keeley Memphis Sun pedal, which gives us that cool reverb and delay of those kind of early 50s studios. So that's what we got going on here. Mic-wise, I'm just using a Sennheiser 609, so basic. Here's what it sounds like with no reverb on it. That's neck position. Now listen to that great Gretsch twangy. Man, these things bite. and not in that kind of Telecaster overly focused sound. It's got a great, a musical bite to it. It's not that like too much like getting bit by a rattlesnake. It's still got bite. But it's a musical bite. Man, these pickups sound phenomenal. Okay, so now we've talked about volume, volume, volume. This is our selector switch. So then, what is this? This, my friends, is the tone control, okay? Now, spoiler alert, it is basically two selections. In the middle, it's off. No tone control, basically just the sound of the pickups out of the output jack. When you flip it up, let's do this in the neck position. When you flip it up, it's like a treble cut. Yeah. Muffy. So listen to when you flip it down, it's muffy, but not as muffy. Now, can you hear a difference? Listen. It's nuanced, very nuanced. But that is what Gretsch felt you needed. Actually, that's what they probably talked to Chet about and what he wanted. And I don't know that I would use it much. Do you guys use it? I guess you can tell me in the comments or whatever. Okay, now the last switch that we haven't talked about is this bad boy right here. This is really a kind of, I don't know, call it a bizarre choice. This switch is a standby, okay? Let me explain. On a tube amplifier, you have your power and you have a standby switch. All standby means is that you turn your power on, leave the amp on all night. When you're not using it, you flip standby so that no sound comes out. That's the same thing that they did here with the guitar. So here it's on, and then off. And it works both ways. So it's on, off, on. It's the same sound. It's just a standby switch. So I guess what they were thinking is for people who, I don't know, don't have a standby switch on their guitar, or maybe they were, you know, forward thinking about like the metal guys who want to go, I don't know. But it's just a standby switch. So basic overview, selector switch, tone control, master volume, neck volume, bridge volume, standby switch, and then this is the big honkin' mechanical switch that operates the mute. So that is what the basic controls of a 6120 are. A couple other little style choices. In the late 1950s, they went from going block inlay on the fretboard to they use the term neoclassical, or as we call it in the parlance of our thumbnail inlays. Okay, you just see little thumbnails along the edge. Personally, this is my favorite look. I love just the clean look. It has a 0 fret. That's something that's kind of an antiquated idea, but really smart. The idea is, hey, now the string sounds the way it would be fretted. Okay? So you have the 0 fret along with all the rest of them just before the nut. Pretty smart idea. The way the, of course, it says a little nameplate here that says Chet Atkins, Nashville model, inlaid Gretch headstock. In the late 50s, this looked a little differently. It had a horseshoe right here, pearl inlaid along with the headstock. They changed that in the 60s to this metal plate, which, I don't know, it's kind of a groovy style thing. You know, if you like it, let me know. Of course, you see the truss rod covering right there. Now, a kind of a neat thing, I shouldn't say neat thing, but a way to date Gretsch guitars is back in the 1950s, they had a paper label, okay, and they were effectively numbered sequentially. But this guitar, being made in the late 60s, Gretsch went through an ownership change in 1960, we'll say 6, okay? And they got bought by the famous piano company Baldwin. And so in 67, 68, and forward, they decided to change the serial number scheme from that sequential thing to a interesting little method, okay? So here is the back of the headstock. Let's go to this camera angle here. No, that's not going to work. Nope. There we go. So on there, one thing that they did in the late 60s is they put Made in USA right here, okay? That was kind of something that they did at Gibson later. In 69, Gibson started putting Made in USA. I've got my opinion on why they did it. Because you've got all these Japanese guitars floating into the marketplace. So now, hey, Made in USA, they want people to know that this isn't an import. Not like they couldn't tell, but, and then here they've got a 5-digit number. Now on this one, I know you can't see, but it says 3, 8, and then 409, okay? So the first digit in the serial number was the month it was made, okay? So 3 meant March, and then 8 meant 1968, and then 40 whatever, it was just which guitar was made that day. So they could make as many as, let's say, 1,000 guitars a day, right? From 001 to 999. And then the first 2 digits told you the month and then the year of the late 60s decade, okay? Of course, that got a little weird because, you know, let's say you got to 10, okay? 10, that would mean October, and then 8. You know, it started getting dumb. And then obviously when you got up to, let's say, the 70s, it had to change again. So whoever came up with that idea, I'm sure they had the best of intentions, but it wasn't long for this world, so it changed afterwards. So if you got a late 60s Gretsch, first digit is the month it was made, or first 2 digits, I guess. And then if it says 7, 8, or 9 after that, it means it was made in either 67, 68, 69. So this is 1968. I bought this one from the original owner. Kind of cool, up near Knoxville, Tennessee. And another thing to look at with old Gretches, they had a bizarre, so the bindings, the plastic parts on these guitars, were made with a early kind of plastic. You know, plastic was still fairly in its infancy. And the plastic that they made, and there's a lot of opinion on as to why this happened, but will start to degrade over time. Collectors and dealers that deal in this kind of stuff, we call it Gretchitis, because with all of these classic vintage Gretches, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So not for nothing, it's like if you actually go to some vintage dealers, they love the low-lying fruit. So they only stick with like Fenders and Gibsons and stuff like that because they didn't use a plastic that had those kind of problems usually, all right? And a lot of these vintage dealers, if they're trying to get for premium prices, they're dealing with guys who are very anally retentive and, well, I want a perfect one. And so a lot of these guys stay away from Gretsch guitars because almost all Gretsch guitars are going to have this Gretchitis on them. And that makes it not perfect. So it doesn't look good in a trophy case. Dude, whatever. More for us, right? But that's just a part nature of this guitar. Now, let me get a close-up on that Gretchitis if you want. I'm going to show you the back little cap here, okay? See that? It looks all crunchy. You can see it's discolored. Look along the edges here. Now, this one's actually pretty light. You can see a little bit on the bindings here. It just looks like little crackles, and they discolor kind of a darker orange. And what will eventually happen is eventually it will start to chip off, okay? Now, there's a huge problem with that, is you'd think, well, it's no big deal, just replace it. Okay, well, for all y'all who don't know how guitars are made, I deal with this all the time at the shop, the bindings are put on first, okay? Then they're scraped, so they're smooth to the body. Then the finish and gloss is put on, okay? So that's a huge problem, because if it's already finished and the binding comes off, yeah, you can glue new bindings on there. First of all, it's a huge mess to scrape all that off of there, okay? But then when you glue the new bindings on, how do you scrape it clean without scratching up the finish? You know, so you don't. You can, but oh my gosh, it's going to be all sorts of little touch up and whatever. You're going to have squeeze out from the cement that you use, or the glue that you use to put that on there. You got to clean off. So oftentimes you fairly well either ruin the finish trying to get the binding perfect, or then the binding looks a little haggard when they put on there. The color never matches quite right. So it's, I'm just telling you, the issue with Gretches, and the reason why they don't have astronomically high values like the Gibsons and Fenders, is because of that binding problem that they all have. Oh, I had one person ask me, he goes, well, wait a minute, how, if it's got no F-hole, how do you get all the electronics in there? And the answer is, on the late 60s, they put this patch on the back. And it's a pad, okay? But when you unsnap it, okay, you know what? I'll just show you guys. When you unsnap this bad boy, look at this. There is a access plate that you, and this one, I'm glad you guys are seeing this, is shrunk to. It uses that kind of cheap early plastic, and so it kind of pools up a little bit. But that's how you take that off, and you can get inside of the electronics and so on. Okay. Anyway, so now you know that. Look at this. You guys are learning all sorts of stuff, but that's what the Vintage Guitar Voyage is all about. I mean, the chances of you know, people being able to see a classic guitar like this is kind of slim. You know, they're just not everywhere. Another goofy little style choice that the 6120 had is they had gold hardware. So the keys are always going to be gold, the knobs are going to be gold, the pickups are gold. But the 6120, I don't know why, but they have a nickel or aluminum, whatever you want to call it, you know, but a silver colored Bigsby tailpiece. Why? I don't know. That's just the style choice. So a 6120 Nashville has the silver tailpiece, colored tailpiece, but the rest of the hardware will be gold. Cool look. Now this one being made in the late 60s, another thing that Baldwin did was they used these different tuning machines. Okay, Gretsch used to have real good tuning machines in the 50s, but then in 68 they changed the machines to these really junky machines. So this guy, which is very common. Go ahead and let's do the back detail again. He changed the keys and used the good quality Grover keys, which a lot of major manufacturers use on their premium guitars, okay? So that's one thing that isn't original to the guitar, but it's, call it an original mod that the original owner did, and a lot of guys spending this kind of money you know, wanted their guitars to be the absolute best. Now that might be the next question. You said this kind of money. How much were these guitars? Well, let me just share this with you. These guitars were freaking expensive, okay? A 6120 back in the mid-1950s cost nearly twice as much as a Gibson Les Paul Standard. Yeah. And cost, well, not quite, but you know, almost 3 times as much as a Fender Telecaster. So you're thinking, holy smokes, you know, a Fender Tele from the 50s, oh my gosh, those are $20,000, $30,000 and more. So this should go for $150,000, right? No, unfortunately not. They are more expensive than, let's just say, some other guitars, but they're still within reach. These guitars right here, honestly, sell for very close to what the modern custom shop models that Gretsch make sell for. So it's a very affordable you know, way to get into the vintage guitar market. Now here's another little goofy thing. So when I got this one from the original owner, the case, I mean, because again, this was expensive, had all sorts of little items in it that he had kept all these years. One of which is the original price list from 1968. Okay, how cool is that? Here's another one. He has a package of Gretsch guitar strings, the Chet Atkins country style guitar strings. All right, look at this heavy, like, plastic case. Dude, you know, that's not how guitar strings come nowadays, that's for sure. And each one was individually, I know you can't see them, but he left the little rings in there. Each one had a little gold foil sticker, okay? I was like, wow, like a cigar band almost, okay? There's also a really cool button that came with it. It said, "That great Gretsch sound." How cool. So, first of all, I'm like going, okay, well, that's cool. And look, I was looking at the pack of strings, $6. I was like, oh, that's what strings cost, you know, roughly. It's what strings cost nowadays. Au contraire. Because you have got to remember something. Put the camera back on me so I can get this point across. The value of $1 today is not the same as the value of $1 in 1968. I would highly recommend that you go to a website called the Inflation Calculator. It's eye-opening. To save you guys a trip, and kind of an easy way to talk about inflation is the value of $1 in 1968 is roughly a measure of 10 today. What does that mean? That means that $1 in 1968 is worth 10 of today's dollars, okay? So back in the olden days, they had what they called a 5 and dime store. Today, we still have those stores, but they're called Dollar Tree, okay, or a dollar store, because again, the value is about 10 times. So when you see these cute little, oh, remember the good old days when you could buy a house for, you know, $25,000. Okay, dude, the cost of a house, move that comma over, because that's times 10, would be $250,000. That's the same cost as now. Okay, when your, you know, papa or someone says, I remember buying a Chevy Impala back in 1968 and it was only $500, or, you know, something, or, no, $5,000, excuse me. Dude, that's $50,000. That's what a nice car costs nowadays. Now, the thing is that it actually cost more, because back in those days, a car, if you were lucky, got like 8 miles to the gallon. And guess what? A gallon of gas cost about 25 cents, which is about $2.50, okay, which is what it costs today. So the thing is that the costs are roughly the same as they were back in the late 60s. It's just the number is different. But this right here is crazy, because this pack of strings says $6. Now think about that. That means that in today's money, the retail price of a pack of strings was $60? That is insane in the membrane, insane in the brain, okay? Now, at first I was like, wait a minute, maybe these aren't from 68. But look at what I got here. The 1968 actual price list that came with it. And on the back, guitar strings, okay? And lo and behold, there are the strings right there, Chet Atkins country style strings, and sure enough, a dozen sets, so you get an extra, you know, 2 packs when you buy them by the dozen, cost $60. Wow. That is incredible, incredibly high. I mean, that is crazy. Now, just to put in perspective, what was the retail price of this guitar in 1968? Well, there it is right there, the 6120 Nashville. This guitar had a retail price of $500, okay? Which, like my little math lesson I gave you, means that this guitar back in 1968 would have, if you saw one in a music store, would have cost your grandfather $5,000. Now, put in perspective, that's what they cost nowadays, okay? If you were to get a USA-made Gretsch 6120, that's about what they cost. The Japanese Terada-made ones, by the way, are awesome. but those are still like $3,500, okay? And so $5,000, you know, that's not out of control, okay? And also, you know, when people go on about, man, them old guitars are worth a lot of money. Dude, they were worth a lot of money in 1968, okay? Really, this stuff is valuable now because it was valuable back then, okay? These weren't on every five and dime. Most regular sized towns didn't even have a music store that had this kind of stuff. So again, different time, still rare guitar, some things don't change, okay? So very cool piece though, 1968 Gretsch 6120. And it did come with a very nice hard shell case, which I have here, but I don't have a camera angle that can show it. The cases for these were kind of a black with silver little threads in it, and it had silver Tolexed trimming. So it was a pretty neat looking case. Definitely the kind of case that you would expect to get when you pay that kind of money on a guitar. So anyways, if you guys you know someone who has one of these that's still alive, that bought it new, talk to them. I'd be kind of curious to know, did they actually pay the full $500? Or was that just kind of like one, you know, nowadays the list price, you know, and you get it for a lot less? Were they really buying strings for $6? Oh my gosh. Or maybe that's why nobody changed their strings back in those days. You know, regardless of what it is, I would love to know more about it. So anyways, hey guys, I want to thank you so much for watching my ridiculously long video. I'm sorry it was so long, but hey, that's what this is about, learning and so on. So I hope you enjoyed this kind of rundown of this 1968 Gretsch 6120, and I'll take you out with a little Eddie Cochran lick. Ooh.